A very good morning to all of you, and today I am going to speak about a perhaps new subject for NBFC, risk governance and fraud risk governance, and why it is needed. My entire research for last 5 years is on large financial institutions, which are generally above 1,000 crore, and particularly for Indian and UK market. So I wish to relate that experience with NBFC in India. If you see the size of the market of NBFC, banks and insurance companies, so my particularly research is on insurance companies, which I am right now extending for banks and regulators. There are 24 life insurance companies and 29 non-life insurance companies and 5 health insurance companies in India. So if you see the size of bank and insurance company, that is pretty limited. But if you see the size of NBFCs in India, it's quite extensive. It's around 11,000. And I didn't get any concrete data. However, it's almost a approximate data cited by many of the sites. Indian banks are currently facing lots of problems related to NPAs. And similar problems are facing by NBFC as well. I have a recent article in this area. The findings I would like to share for NBFC. So fraud is an issue for Punjab National Bank very recently. And why it was the issue that we explored, and we found that there is a one very commonly adopted model across world to control the risk in the organization is known as 3 lines of defense model, which has not yet been introduced in Indian public sector banks. We are almost a decade back from the international market, and I can clearly see that there are weak controls, because in my research I interviewed 50 chief risk officer and chairman of large insurance companies of 13 Indian insurance companies and 7 large British insurance companies. And I have several case studies in this area which demonstrate that there are still very weak controls in comparison to global practices in Indian market. So why Indian banks need a fraud risk governance framework? Indian NBFCs are facing lots of troubles in getting finance, and how these investors will invest money into these NBFCs once they are assured that there is a high level of controls put in place so that investor money is secured. Large institutions are still struggling to implement risk governance, so how same applies for NBFC, I suppose. So it will help in dealing with market turbulence, reduce reputation losses, minimize financial leakage. It will give a structured mechanism to control fraud, improve financial foreign institutional investment, improve credit rating, profitability and compliance. But worldwide these mechanisms are used. However, Indian government has to really work hard to adopt it now. So I found that most adopted approach worldwide is risk reductionist approach. However, I am not happy with that approach, not only in India, even across globe. And I am proposing a new approach that is based on system approach. So I found key issue is there is no vision for fraud risk governance. Nobody knows why they are doing it. If regulator says to them they are doing something, and if regulator doesn't say, there is almost no approach or no vision for fraud risk governance in India. There are 2 types of adopters of fraud risk governance. One is label adopters and another is serious adopters. So label adopters adopt risk governance just for the sake of compliance. That if regulator says them to promote adoption, they adopt it. However, serious adopters adopt risk governance to derive value, as I highlighted in my last slide. There are lots of pros and cons. Risk reductionist approach, they derive low cost because they focus that what are the areas primarily where they can focus upon to reduce the cost, and they can derive the maximum benefit. However, they don't focus on the root cause of the problem, why this problem is happening. There is no guidance to fraud risk department in any company. I don't know whether NBFC in India. So I found when there is no vision for fraud risk governance, there are lots of problems. Team level focus is shattered. Their common understanding is low. They don't know what is the vision. So every team is acting in their own, and there is a superficial treatment of the problem. They try to deal with the problem with a quick fix approach rather than a long-term solution, and the problems keep on piling up. So if you go to any bank institution now in India, they will discuss lots of problem with you. But the problem is they are not able to understand the system itself, why these problems are occurring. These problems are interrelated, and if they focus on how this problem begins, the solution can come up automatically. So with this risk reductionist approach, the problem is initially they are hired chief risk officer, then they hired lots of risk team, then the team size is increasing, then 5 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, then problems. Earlier there were 2 issues, 5 issues, 10 issues, now it's almost 50 issues. Risk registers are also rising from 50 to 2000. Then how long they can continue with that? What would be the size of risk team in next 10 years? There is no vision. However, with the system approach, when they understand the problem itself, they can deal directly with the problem. So here in this approach, I found that motivation of the staff is better, and also there is a high level of shared understanding. They find a solution which is easy, convenient, and long-term in nature. And overall, the number of problems, because they are interrelated, so they find the solution very easy. So based on this approach, I am suggesting that there is a need for setting a new vision for cognitive risk culture, and risk culture and risk governance work together. So cognitive risk culture, I mean that everybody in the organization understand the risk and their responsibility towards risk governance. They should link the industry-wide fraud data with the root cause. So there are approximately 7 root cause: people, system, process, culture, like that. And they need to link their risk. Risk is an outcome. So they need to link the outcome with the root cause, which would help them to take corrective actions. Implement 3 lines of defense model, which is widely applicable globally, and focus on embedding risk appetite statement with all 3 lines of defense model. Risk appetite is the amount of risk a company is willing to take. They need to motivate employees, because employees say this is the department, this is the job of risk management department, why I should care. So they need to motivate employees across the 3 lines of defense model to adopt the best practices by linking it with performance appraisal. Motivate employees and to adopt best practices, and think about what's for me approach.